All right, we are here for the first ever Brite Lite Music Kingdom Chorus artist interview, artist investigation, interrogation, inquisition, perhaps.
Ooh, inquisition.
Man, I'm so excited, man. I'm Zach Flash. You all know me from Brite Lite Radio and Brite Lite Music, and I am so excited to be here for this inaugural podcast, video cast interview with a good friend of mine and a rising star in the Christian music industry. I'm so excited for you guys to meet him. Here he is, Tyler Philip Ratcliffe.
What's up, man? How you doing?
It is so good to have you here, man. Thank you for coming all the way to the Palatial Studios, and it's great to have you, man. I know it was a long drive from the Outback, Sydney,
right,
Ohio.
Yeah, no, I drove in from Australia.
That's right. That's right. The bridge across that first ocean there is probably
for the first continent jump is it's a little difficult.
Probably one of the longest bridges of your life, I'm sure. But as I said, Tyler is an up and coming Christian artist, and man, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Just something you want everybody to know.
Well, guys, I'm left-handed. That's pretty much all you need to know.
Amazing. How do you play guitar?
I was right-handed. That's pretty funny. Well, I'm a Christian artist. Started out in the worship scene at my church, and it's been a crazy last 2 years. I started jumping into writing just about a year and a half ago, and now I'm about 17 tracks deep as far as Spotify goes. So things are cruising along pretty well. 17
tracks deep. All right, we're going to get into those. We're going to get into your discography here in just a second. But I got to say, man, with you, this is just a little bit different because you and I have a history.
Yeah, we do.
A very shallow history, but we have a history. It's kind of fun. We met at a writer's retreat in Michigan. Did we not? Was that where it was?
Yeah, last
Michigan.
July 2024, yeah.
And I got to tell you guys, I walk in, and here comes what I can only describe as the living ghost of Brandon Lake. I thought somebody had done a bad clone job and sent him in. No, I was just kidding. I saw this
running
guy
out of toner a little bit as I came off the printer.
Yeah, the printer was just out of cyan. You know, we got to refill that one. But no, I tell you what, he came in with his braids just flowing, and I thought, what is with this guy? He was so intriguing. But I'll tell you what, we hit it off from the beginning. You've been an awesome guy since the moment I met you, and it's been a pleasure to get to know you, and it's a pleasure getting to talk to you now. So you, before we talk about your discography, I have to ask, man, as you're taking this artist journey, and you said you're in your second year, how is it balancing the artistic journey and your family life? I've had the privilege of meeting your family. You have a lovely, beautiful wife, Taylor. You got 3 of the most energetic kids that have ever been birthed. Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. So honestly, when this started, when I first started writing music, it was for my kids. So let's back it up just a little bit. My grandma was a gospel singer, and I have her albums sitting in my house. And as I started getting into music, I began to pull those records out and actually listen to them. And at one point, it crossed my mind that the only actual recordings we have of my grandma are her praising the name of Jesus. And so I was like, that's the legacy I want to leave. So that's when I started poking around online, trying to figure out how to get recordings done and writing, and I put out I brought my first track to life, One Nation, One King, and played it for my friends and my family, and it was cool, and I didn't think that it was going to go any farther than that, but everybody kind of insisted that I actually release it, and so I kind of used Canva to create my album cover, don't we all?
Who doesn't love Canva? By the way, Canva, if you're looking for another sponsorship opportunity, we're looking, all right?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, everybody knows Canva. So I created the album art, threw it up on Spotify, and it went pretty well. And next thing you know, I was getting invited to a writer's retreat and other things. So once this started to develop, I actually sat down with Taylor, my wife, and we had the conversation of, I think God is calling me to do this. And, we kind of explored that together. What does that look like? I mean,
Do you feel like either of you had any idea what this would entail?
I think we had a little bit of an inkling. So early on, I had a pretty clear idea once it came to me what God was going to do with me, and I hold that pretty closely. But I had a pretty good idea of where I was headed, and so I sat down with Taylor and said, "This is what God is going to do in my life, and that's going to involve me being away for days at a time, and a lot, and potentially out on the road, late nights, and in a very inconsistent schedule. And with young kids, inconsistent schedules are very difficult." But we prayed over it, and she said, "I'm giving you 2 years to chase it." Now, this happened about a year ago. So we were about a year into me kind of exploring this space before she said, "I'm going to give you that." So I still have a year, but
The clock is ticking.
the clock is ticking. But no, I actually asked her the other day, I said, you said 2 years, and you're going to give me 2 years to see if this is really what God's got for me. And I was like, "What do you think so far?" And she's like, "Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot more than 2 years of this." So, which is cool. And, she's always been my biggest supporter, and my kids, they're the reason that I've been writing the songs, and I love hearing them run around singing the songs. And, Danny's always asking, "Hey, take this cup from me, Lord." Like, she doesn't know the actual names. She just knows the parts that she's memorized. And her favorite one is called "Take This Cup." And so she makes me sing it in the house constantly. Which is funny because it's not one that actually is doing particularly well online, but she absolutely loves it. So I play that one a lot. But yeah, it's honestly, as far as balance goes, Taylor's just a champ. She just says, "You got to go. Okay, go." I mean, I take off and she handles it however long I got to be gone. And when I come back, she's there with a smile, and I pick up right where I left off. And I try to really, especially when I come home from a longer trip, 2 or 3 days, I'll set my phone down for the day, and it's just very intentional, focused family time, because I don't want to fall into the trap of ministry where kids become second to the ministry. My kids are my first ministry, and so they're the reason I'm doing this. They're the reason that I want to leave this legacy, and so I try to be really intentional with my time when I'm with them, so that they get a very present experience with me.
I think that's amazing, man. Plus, I mean, you got to start them young if you want the backing band in about 12 years that you can take on the road with you.
I'm saying, we did you ever watched Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how in the Avatar they set the toys out in front of the baby and the baby picks the right toys or whatever?
Okay.
We did the same thing with Danny when she turned 4 and we were like, "Okay, here's a drum, here's a guitar," and then we pulled up online. We're like, "This is a trumpet, this is that." Walk through 15 instruments. I was leaning her towards the harp, honestly. There's a lot of scholarships around the harp.
The harp is a dying art, unfortunately, and that would have been an amazing choice.
Yeah. She chose the 6-string harp, the electric guitar. So we bought her a Lug guitar, not sponsored, but pretty good company. They make a 3-string kids guitar.
No kidding, okay.
Yeah, and it's the top 3 strings of a guitar, so it's the high 3. Mm-hmm. And then I think you can go to a 4 and then a 6, but they teach you chords in those top 3 strings, so it makes it very easy for her. She can already hit, 4 chords, your G, C, E minors, and Ds, and she can kind of play along a little bit. So it's cool. It comes with an app, and she learns on the app, especially when Papa's away and he can't teach. She gets to use the app and continue her lessons. But we're about to do the same thing with Mac, but it's fairly obvious that he wants drums. Every Sunday he's climbing on the drum kit. So I posted a video of him actually playing. It was pretty cute.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Well, super cool, man. That is really amazing to hear. I'm so thankful that you have such a supportive wife, because I know that is such a huge part of it.
Oh, yeah.
And especially somebody that will understand all the hours out on the road. That's a huge blessing.
Yeah, the fact that, firstly, when we moved to Sydney, we actually moved there because we bought a gym. And as I transitioned into music, we were completely away from all family. So we began to pray a lot for God to provide us a support system. And he's provided the most amazing support system in Sydney for us. When I'm gone, Taylor's got 10 other people that are there if she needs them. But at the same time, she's just a champ, you know? So, like, some people are very codependent in the way that they parent, and that's fine. You know, it's totally acceptable. Everybody does their own thing. But, like, the fact that I'm just a bonus when I'm there is a great thing for the family as far as, like, the stability and the continuity of the day. So,
awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm pretty sure you're worth a little more than a bonus there, but I see what you're saying. I definitely see what you're saying.
Right.
So, man, I'll tell you what, that's totally awesome. And now that we know that you are at least the most fortunate supported man in the universe at the moment, why don't we talk about your discography for a second, man? Let's talk about some of your releases because, we're going to give the people information on where to find you at the end of this podcast, but I want to know, like, how many songs have you released about to this date?
So I've released 17 tracks up to this date, 17 songs.
Mm-hmm. Now, many of those were in an album, right?
13.
Yeah.
Yep. So I released 5 or 6 singles about a month apart, and then I went ahead and dropped an album back in September. You were there.
I was there. Yeah,
I got party.
Man, I got to play keys with this guy for his album release concert, and let me tell you, what an experience! That was just the most amazing night. I was so honored to be a part of it, and I'm telling you, man, the people responded so positively at that concert.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, that concert, it's still like probably the best one to date. So what was cool about it was we did it in my church because that's kind of my home base. It holds about 250. I think we crammed in 275 in that concert. It was standing room only, and we had already pulled in more chairs. So I had asked the church, how many can our room hold, right? Mm-hmm. They were like, you can hold about 250. I was like, okay, let's do 275 as far as tickets.
You clearly didn't talk to a fire marshal, I take it.
No, I didn't.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, don't out me. But so I asked how many could fit, but what they didn't tell me was there's only like 220 chairs or something. Mm-hmm. So I put 270, and I thought that, like, they're free tickets, right? So you can claim them, and there were people that were like, well, I claimed 6 and only 5 people come. So I was like, all right, so you're going to have some of that fall off. There was no fall off. Like, we had probably 10 people didn't come, but we had probably 10 people day of, there's no tickets, but you're my personal friend. Can you figure out how to get me in? I was like, just show up. Mm-hmm. And it was standing room only. We crammed 30 more chairs down the aisles, made the aisles real skinny, added extra rows, all the way up to the front of the platform.
Man, people had to see what Tyler Philip Ratcliffe was all about,
dude. I don't know why so many people came out. I'll tell you why. My friends got a slot on a billboard for me. They surprised me. Taylor. So I had started doing flyers. I flyered the town, and everyone was so grateful and helpful and able to put flyers up. And then Taylor's like, hey, when you come home, I want to go for a drive. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. Like, which is pretty normal. We like to go for drives. Kids sleep in the back and we talk or whatever. And I found that we just kept driving past the same intersection, and she was getting more and more frustrated. It's an electronic billboard, and she's waiting to happen to drive past when mine is up there. And my friends had banded together, and they took my flyer, and they kind of rearranged the pieces, and they put me on a billboard for a month. So that was amazing, and that's part of the reason we had such a big turnout, which was cool.
I got to tell you, man, that was super cool for me to see. As I was driving away from the concert, I was headed back because you let me crash at your place that night. I was headed back to your place, and I looked up, and I was like, holy smokes, there's this giant billboard with your mug on it. Yeah. Tyler Philip Ratcliffe at Sydney Church of the Nazarene. It was amazing.
Yeah. No, that was super cool. I think it stayed up for an extra like 2 days, but then eventually it fell off. But yeah, that was super cool. Putting out an album. A lot of people went against the idea of an album. The common thing right now is to drop singles forever and then just keep dropping singles forever. And
well, see, a lot of people don't have the patience to sit down and listen to an album. So what prompted you to do an album?
My grandma's records. That's literally what it was. I was like, I don't want a pile of singles. Like, I even have it on vinyl. I got it printed on vinyl for myself. And I set it next to hers, and, she has 2. And I want to do 3, so it's got to go every other, and I want mine in the front. No, I'm just kidding, but I do want, I do like that it's right that our albums are sitting next to each other. It's kind of cool, and And I had a great response to an album. And the cool thing about an album was it's not never-ending progress. It was a capstone to that phase in my life. I wrote worship songs that came from my heart. I think there's only one song on there with a co-writer. You're on there. You wrote.
I remember that track. That was a good one.
Anthem,
Yeah.
and that was a last-minute throw-on. Everything up to that point was just me, and so I mean, it's all. If you listen to it, the production's amazing. My producer Lucas, throw out a name shout for Lucas, did an amazing job. But it was all Lucas, so it's MIDI drums, and his friend Franco did the guitars, and they share a studio. And it was very an intimate album. It was me and Lucas bringing it to life, and that was it. And moving straight out of that into meeting Madeline and writing Wrestle with an Angel and bringing in other instrumentalists and co-writers and enlarging the process is a whole different feel than that album.
Right. So Wrestle with an Angel, that was kind of a big single release that you had after your album. Before we get to that one, I want to ask you real quick, would you be open to, I know AI is kind of a hot button topic nowadays, but do you ever see yourself using AI to sing with your grandma?
That's an interesting question. And yes. So here's a crazy story. I have a song that I wrote with my grandma, but not with my grandma. So I learned one of her songs because I was just like wanting to play along with it one day. This is 2 years ago, probably, right when I was starting. And so I wrote out the chords and I was playing along with it. And then like a couple days later, or maybe a week later, I was taking a nap. I went to take a nap, had a very clear dream. It was such a clear dream. I was in the throne room. It was like a stadium. It was just a stadium. And obviously, like, everything is white and bright and pretty. And what my imagination can come up with, you know. And I'm singing that song with my grandma, like the young version of my grandma. Her picture on the vinyl, that's what she looked like. And there was more to it. There's a whole extra verse, a whole like second chorus in it. And it was much more like something I would write. Obviously, my brain was coming up with it there. But I just woke up and I was like, oh, like I got to write this down. So I run over and I write down all the words. There was no time. It was like 5 minutes of writing. And I walk out of the my studio, because like it's my bedroom, my studio, my living room. So I had to walk through the studio, pick up a guitar, and I go out, and Taylor's sitting in a chair, and I'm like, Taylor, I just wrote a song. She's like, I thought you were napping. I was like, I was. But you have to hear, and I told her that same exact story, and then I played her the song, and she was like, that's cool. Like, that is really cool. But the issue so far is, like, it's a Southern gospel track. Mm-hmm. I don't know where that fits for me. And we haven't yet figured out quite the production of how it lands. Mm-hmm. And I'm very particular because I heard it in my head.
Sure.
And I want it to be portrayed that way. So I was trying to figure out, how do you strip a vocal from a vinyl? And I've been trying and trying. And it was like a year of trying like different things and sent it off. Had it actually pulled and ripped MP3 and tried to work from there. And I was kind of giving up. And then somebody told me that there's an AI thing that'll rip things into stems for you. And I threw that in there, and it ripped her vocal out perfectly. Mm-hmm. So now I have
Those older recordings are real easy to do that because they're sparse. There's not very many tracks to them.
Right.
So it's real easy to separate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I have the isolated vocal of that song sitting in a file waiting for the right time, for the right track. Someday I'll finish that project, but yeah.
How cool is that, man? I can't wait to hear it because that's just one of the cool things that you can do with AI. This is not a commercial for AI. However, AI, we are looking for sponsorships again. Sorry to sound so thirsty on your interview, bro. I just got to do business while we're here.
Absolutely. Make your money, dude. Make that bread. That bread.
But you know what? Let's backtrack. Let's get back to what you were talking about with starting to co-write with people. You mentioned the track "Wrestle with an Angel." Super cool song, man. If you haven't heard Wrestle with an Angel, push pause. Make sure you come back, but push pause. Go listen to it real quick. Such a cool track. And
Thanks,
you
dude.
collabed with, who was the young lady?
Madeline Ray.
Madeline Ray, that's right.
Yeah.
Tell me about that experience.
That was a wild experience because honestly, so I knew a guy named Sam Wood. He reached out to me through Instagram, and we've been talking since the beginning. And he's just been encouraging me and trying to give me next steps and things like that, and kind of giving me guidance. And he was doing the same thing with Maddie. I call her Maddie. Her professional name is Madeline, but I call her Maddie, so I have to be particular. So he was like, "You should write with Maddie. You should connect." And so I connected, and I was just like, "Hey, Sam said we should write together." And she's like, "Sure, I'm always down for a write, whatever." So we get on, and we're talking about our styles, and I'd heard some of her songs, and we're very different stylistically, except for the common thread of obviously Christianity, right? But
That's a pretty strong thread I've found.
Right. That's a whole niche, like it's a whole genre, actually. But we were kind of combing through ideas, and I was like, I'm just like flipping through ideas, and I found one from like 6 months before, and it literally just said like, "I wrestled with an angel, now I bear a new name." And I was like, "Maddie, you write story songs. I've got an idea." And I was like, "What if we do like wrestle with an angel, now I bear a new name?" And she's like, "What if we got like that like Southern country rock anthem Ann Wilson style song?" And I was like, "Okay, give me an example of what you're talking about, where we're going with this." And she was just like, "I wrestled with an angel, now I bear a new name." And I was like, "Let's do that. Let's do that song. Quick, get your guitar."
Yeah.
It was literally that fast. Like we hemmed and hawed for a half hour, found that, and then we wrote the song in like an hour. It was so quick. We banged that song out really quickly, and
Isn't it funny how a song takes on a life of its own and just kind of, you just start to follow it instead of telling it where to go?
yeah, I've found there's two different paths. There's like you find the hook, and it pulls you to the end of the song in like an hour, or you fight for every single lyric in a 4 to 6 hour write session, and you're hating yourself at the end, but then you end up with something usually like way like meaningful and deep and powerful. That's where you have to dig for the lyrics. I like the ones that rush fast. I'm a fast writer typically, and I've written with slow writers that force me to slow down, and it's such a good experience for me. But it's definitely not in my wheelhouse. So the way that this happened was we finished the song, and she was like, "Can I post this on Instagram?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" So that night, she makes a post singing the song, just the chorus, and it went bonkers. Millions of hits. It went like quickly. And I was like, "Hey, Maddie, can you do me a favor and like collab the video with me?" Because I helped write it. I mean, I wasn't in the video, so it was super nice that she was willing to do that. But there were just so many people in the comments that were like, "You got to get the song out. You got to get the song out." And I was like, "All right, Maddie, we got to get this song out." So I put a scratch down like the next day. Now, mind you, this is happening right. I think we did the write the week of my album release concert. So I was like scattered. And then
I actually remember you talking about, you said, "Man, I got this banger that I'm working on." And and that was, you were kind of cryptic about it, but that was the song you were talking about.
Yeah, and then it went bonkers, and when everything settled down and I looked and it was like millions of hits, I was like, "Oh no, like we're not," because I actually told my wife, I was like, "At the end of this album, I want to take like a month and chill and just be with the family and be present." And like, she was like, "I don't think you get to do that." I was like, "All right." So I'm back in the studio, hit the scratch track, I hit Lucas with it, and I was like, "Give me like a rough track back, you know, like MIDI drums and just kind of a shape of it." And he shaped the song out, and then we were talking through it, and we were like, "Well, we said like Ann Wilson, like style. So who does she use for guitars?" And we looked up Chad Carruthers, and I hit him up on Instagram, and he was like, "Sure, dude, send me the track." So I sent him the track, and he rocked it. I mean, he knocked it out of the park. And then I was like, "Well, I'm thinking like big drums, like Count 'Em, like Brandon Lake's song." And so I looked up the credits of who was on that, and Will Chapman from Colony House was the drummer for that.
All right.
So I reached out to him, and he put the drum tracks down and just crushed it as well. Like, there's something cool about using a drummer that you just drop the tracks in, you press play, and it's just whoa, what just happened? You know,
It's a beautiful thing.
so we didn't ever come to studio together. This was like a thing that we pieced together, and that's how most of my music goes. But then I told Maddie I would drive out and record her vocals, but we didn't get around to it that week. And she moved from Pennsylvania, which is like 5 or 6 hours away, to Massachusetts, which was like a 13-hour drive or something like that, probably more. And I was like, so got in the car, took off. I had a great time, dude. It was a cool road trip. Taylor went with me. We hung out with Maddie. We said goodnight to Maddie. We recorded in her living room of her brand new apartment. We said goodnight at like midnight, and we're like, let's go find a hotel. It was packed out. Every hotel in a 3-hour radius was booked solid.
What month of the year was this?
This was no, it wasn't November. It was October, mid-October.
Oh, it's not winter yet. There should be room at the inn. Christmas joke.
We were panicked. We were looking at like $1,000 a night rooms trying to find somewhere. Everything was packed out. Everything from the Motel 8 to the whatever the high end would be. We were looking at casinos, so we were like trying to get a space.
Wow.
And we just like went back to Maddie's house and just knocked on the door. It's like 1 or 2 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And we were like, can we stay with you? And she's like already asleep. And she's like, yeah, come on in. And she had a futon. So we folded the futon. We both slept opposite ways on the futon. Worst sleep of my life. But man, it was so nice of her to like, she was still really like happy to have us there. And then we went to church. We got to see her first week as a worship leader at her new church, which was convenient.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that was cool. And then I went home, and then the only thing that we did after that was we added a banjo, because I was like, it's missing something. Mm-hmm. And my dad's a banjo player, and I was like, we need to do banjo. So reached out to a different banjo player, not my dad, and threw banjo on the track, because I got to get those bluegrass roots in there somehow. And that song, we dropped it. We did like a live release. It's sitting around like 250,000 streams right now. And
Is that your biggest played track? Is that your most popular track?
By far.
Wow.
By far. The next one under that's about 25,000. So you got a factor of 10 difference currently. Mm-hmm. But it was really cool, and it was cool to be a part of. I felt like I was 2 steps ahead of where my artistry should be, because I was kind of experiencing it alongside Maddie, and she has a much bigger following and fan base, and they were very excited about the song. So it was really cool to experience, and it was cool to like walk with her through that, because it was also her very first track. She'd never released before.
Having done an album before that, did you have any big revelations about music and community, or community in music, or community through while creating music? Is there anything that kind of clicked in your head?
I'd say, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, after bringing in different musicians into tracks, and working with more and more people, and doing so many co-writes since that album, I was like, I don't ever want to go back, because the weaknesses I bring into the room are covered by other people's strengths. And honestly, the fun part is when you release a song that's got co-writers on it, you have people to celebrate the song with. Like, I've done like a single release that was literally just me again. After doing those, it was kind of like, we should just move on to the next song. Like, this isn't as fun. I want to send it to the writers and say, look what I was able to do with what you guys gave me. Like, it's so cool.
There's also an element of accountability there to do right by the song. Like as you're releasing it, to promote it the right way, to put the effort in the marketing of it, and pushing it out in front of the people. Yeah,
and to that, I'll say, like, there's a big difference. My first couple singles, I would just drop them, and I'd put up a social media post, and I'd say, new song out, and I'd celebrate with my friends. They'd listen to it, they'd love it, and we move on. And I was getting a couple hundred streams. After Wrestle with an Angel, I felt a duty to take releases more seriously. And that has obviously made a huge difference moving forward. Wrestle with an Angel was completely organic. We had thousands of people wanting to hear that song. And so that was awesome. That was cool. And honestly, I was flattered that people wanted to listen to something we wrote. But moving forward, there's so much more to a release that nobody really tells you about unless you ask. And then they're like, oh, yeah, you need to learn how to playlist your songs. You need to learn how to market your songs. You need to learn how to, X, Y, and Z. There's so many steps to a release that I just didn't know about. And it's just part of stewarding a song is you have to know how to be basically your own marketing agent. I don't have to be my own because Kingdom Chorus does most of that work for me. Shout out to Eric Abbott.
Holla!
You work with Eric too, right?
I've heard of him before.
Yeah, once or twice. Yeah, yeah. Eric was actually at the retreat that I met Zach at. So just for a little backstory, met him there, picked him up, and he started playlisting, and then we've kind of stepped through many layers together. Like, hey, I want to learn how to do radio, and he's like, cool, let's figure it out. And then we're Google searching and we're researching and trying to figure out, like, how do we get songs onto radio? And then we crack that, and it's like, oh, cool.
He is awesome at doing that kind of thing. He really is.
Yeah.
My thought as you were saying that was songs really are like your children.
Right.
And the way that you use the term stewarding a song, and I think that's a really amazing way to describe it. But if you liken it to raising a child, you gotta discipline the child, you gotta feed the child, you gotta take them to the doctor when they're sick, you gotta send them off to school, you gotta do all of those things. And so instead of
care for it,
instead of having an 18-year span where you do that, you condense it considerably. But I feel like in a very real way, a lot of love. I won't say as much love as for an actual child, but it's got to be pretty close for some of these songs you're releasing. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would say it's easy to. It's like putting your heart out there, and then judging your heart based off streams sometimes, and that hurts. Mm-hmm. And so it's very important, like you said, when you're caring for it, to do your due diligence and give it its best, but then and take into account the numbers for the sake of what to do moving forward, but to not judge a song you released based off those numbers. Because I've had songs where I'm like, dude, this is my favorite song, I'm gonna release it, and then it doesn't hit. One of my favorite songs that I put out was a slow song on my album called "Come All You Weary," and it's probably like the lowest performing song on the album, but I absolutely love it because I literally just said, like, what does it look like to sing scripture? Just find a verse, sing it over and over in pretty melodies and really absorb it. And so I was really disappointed in that song for a long time because of the stream numbers. And it wasn't until I came back around and was like, no, like the cool thing about Christian music is if it affects one person, we win. Like,
absolutely.
Right. You don't really get that in the secular world. You're not trying to win people for the kingdom in the secular artistry world. But it affects one person for Christ, you win. And you never really know. So you just have to chalk them all up to wins. Like,
absolutely.
I like to be optimistic and just say they're all winning,
So now you said that this was a song that you just took directly from Scripture. And you said you listed yourself as the writer.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, well...
Yeah, it's just called copyright.
God, instead of sending his lawyers down, he's just saying, well, we'll just decrease the... No, I'm just kidding.
We're just going to drop those stream numbers right there. That's not going anywhere.
What we're actually saying, people, is listen to every single one of the songs because they're all just amazing.
Absolutely.
In fact, I want to fast forward to one of your most recent release to date, which is Whisper Above My Shout. I loved the concept of this song, The Maniac at Gadara. That was the Bible story that you drew from, right?
Yeah.
The one with Legion, for they are many.
Right.
Cool story, even cooler song. What can you tell us about that one?
That was an interesting song. So actually the concept was brought to the table by Jesse J, a fantastic writer out of Nashville. First time I had met him, I was in the room with him and he brought this concept to the table and we all resonated with it. And so we dug in. It's a 5-person write, which is pretty rare. That I don't normally do those, but it was really cool because there's a lot of energy in the room. And we're trying to figure out how to rework some of these melodies and kind of make it authentic. And honestly, like I walked away with kind of this amalgamation of everybody that was in the room putting their thoughts into this song. And it kind of, it was cool in the moment. We were psyched about it. But then when I cooled on it, I was like, I just don't know if this is the right thing to do. like the right track to be putting out right now. So I actually sent it off to a different producer that like claimed they did folk. And I was like, this seems like it's got a folk vibe to it. What do we do with it, right? And the guy was like, yeah, sure, I can. And then it didn't produce exactly at nearly what I wanted it to be. And so again, it sat on my shelf. And then after that, I sent Lucas a pile of my songs, and he's like, what is this thing? And he played it, and he was like, I like that, but it's like the wrong genre almost. And so I gave him the stems from the original producer, and he started tacking things together. And then I brought a drummer in for that to bring tracks to the table. And then I just said, I was like, okay, that's cool. Layer more guitars on it. He's like, cool. He layers more guitars. I was like, okay, that's cool. Can you layer another guitar on it? And he's like, yeah, I can layer another guitar on it. I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I was like, you know what this needs? It needs a gospel choir. So I went out, and he's like, you kidding me? And I found a gospel choir that sent back like 72 vocal tracks.
Sweet.
And I drop him this file, and he's like, 72 tracks. Like, you're killing me. And then he had to start a whole other file to mix those vocals. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, it's almost there. I'm going to send you a few more vocals. And I did like 30 more vocal takes and layers and background vocals and stuff. So he's like, hey, dude, this is over 200 tracks. We're done. Like, this is it. And what came out of the mix and the master was Whisper Above My Shout as we hear it now. And the song has had a huge impact. I've had a lot of people that have said, like, I'm able to place myself in that Bible story, and I never thought that was me. You know what I mean? Like, it really tackles mental health or finding yourself in physical darkness, addictions and just a metaphorical change of all kinds.
What a timely song for so much of what's going on today.
Right.
Most definitely.
Right. And I think a lot of people are able to resonate with, like, maybe not literal voices in their heads, but the voices of doubt, the voices of uncertainty, the voices of you're not good enough. In the case of generational curses, that might be the voice of your parents or your grandparents, mm-hmm. or someone in the church that you look up to or something. So there's a lot of voices that are in our heads. It's not just schizophrenia. It's not just demons.
No, and those voices stack up. They do. They keep, one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And if you seem unable to overcome it, no way you can overcome 5 or
right.
12 or 30.
Right. And just like in the Bible, like the demons were controlling him, like we let these voices control what we think we can and can't do. And that's part of, what I overcame stepping into the artist space. I never thought I was good enough I thought maybe I'd end up being a songwriter one day, but I never thought I'd be an artist. I didn't think my voice was where it should be. And a lot of that was just the voices of self-doubt, and voices from my past and things. And the song, speaking of Jesus, like just having that very subtle whisper that comes out of those voices and yet can still have the power to call you out of those and back into who he wants you to be. And then what does he do next? He doesn't let him stay with him. He says, go, mm-hmm. go to your town, go tell.
Absolutely.
Go share the story of the gospel. And so that's what he does. He calls you out of your situation. And then he says, go, I'm sending you. So fantastic.
Well, I got to tell you, man, it has been one of the coolest things watching God work through your life and overcome those doubts that you say you've had in your mind. And I get it, man. We all struggle with these doubts at one point or another, but it has been so cool to see God move through you and in your life and open doors for you. Like I don't want to reveal too much, but you've got another song coming out pretty quick. And it's a really cool one. I've gotten to have a sneak peek of it because you were looking for guinea pigs for a music video.
Yeah.
And I happened to volunteer as tribute for that. But
I just sent you the track anyways.
Well, I love to give it a listen.
Right.
But this one, it's called Heaven Come Down, and dude, you're bringing on some heavy hitters.
Yeah, this one's going to be really fun because it harkens back to my album. It harkens to that intro to a set list, a worship song, like your intro song, like that high energy jump around worship song. I had a lot of those on my album, and then I've kind of drifted more towards the gritty. I've had some more grit come out of my voice and some more of that authentic raw. And I was like, I kind of want to go back to just a worship moment, you know. So Heaven Came Down is something that I brought to the table with Jonathan Duff. Interestingly enough, Jonathan got picked on my most recent Reels idea that I had to throw a bunch of names on a wheel and spin it. And Jonathan's name popped up, super awesome. But I knew him already because we talked a few times. Somebody introduced us like a year ago and was like, hey, you need to check out this kid out in California. This kid sounds like Phil Wickham.
Now, hang on a second. You're telling me that you, the illegitimate clone of Brandon Lake, happened to find a recreation of Phil Wickham?
Yeah, Phil Wickham Jr.
Dude, can I be the jelly roll in this equation?
Yeah, well, that's why they that's hilarious. That's why that they even introduced us, because they're like, you remind me of Brandon Lake, he reminds me of Phil Wickham, you guys need to talk. So we talked, but nothing ever really came of it. And then I just called him up and was like, hey, do you want to do a collab? Because I have a song.
Yeah.
And he was like, absolutely.
Sweet.
So I'm actually, I depending on when this airs, like I'm flying out to make it happen with him. So
that is so awesome, dude. That is so awesome.
It's just in time for summer. I'm psyched about it. It's going to be a really high energy, worship set list starter.
Well,
I think we're in need of some new ones of those.
Look, the track is already a banger. I am excited to hear the collab, the finished product. It's going to be amazing. There is not a doubt in my mind. Make sure y'all follow this guy because you've got to hear it. It's going to be amazing. There's not a doubt in my mind. And dude, your story is amazing. And another thing that amazes me about it is you're not just an artist. You're not just a husband and a father. But lately, God has thrown another iron in your fire. You became a worship leader. Full time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, man.
Yeah, part time, but yeah.
Well, okay.
I am the full worship leader of the church.
You are the man at that church, the worship leader. I would love to hear how that's working out for you, man. Because obviously worship is a part of your life. It fuels the songs. Anybody that listens to your songs can hear the worship that you pour out through those songs. But what is it like to have to pour out like that on a weekly basis?
It has been interesting. So the last 2 years, I've been on the worship team, and I continued to grow. And as I was growing, I was finding more and more opportunities to play outside of the church. And when the church came to me and said, "We need you to step in," my immediate reaction was like, "Oh, like this is going to throw a wrench in everything I've been doing." Like now I have to be here every single Sunday. I can't, when I'm flying out to see Jonathan, like I got to be back on Sunday now. Whereas used to be, I just say like, hey, I'm not going to be in. And so I was spiraling for a few weeks about it, trying to figure out how do I continue my artistry while stewarding this position well. And it was a lot. And I actually, I went down to a church in Salem called the Salem Church of God and met with the worship leader there. And firstly, he was an open book, which is cool. And he just walked me through a lot of the stuff they do. But what he didn't focus on really was like the technical stuff. He was focused on like the spiritual growth of his team, which honestly, I can say with a little bit of embarrassment, like I hadn't considered that too much. I considered like, how do we bring excellence? How do we make sure it's worshipful? How do we stay focused, and how do we grow? And he was like, yeah, we're a Bible study. Like we're a group, we're doing life together. We're pouring into each other spiritually. And so that kind of threw the brakes on very quickly. And granted, it was very early in the process, so I still had a lot of time to figure out, get my footing for this, but it's a lot of, how do I steward these people? Like how do I not teach? Because most of them are older and I'd say better Christians even than me, for whatever that means. But just how do I love on them I mean, they're great. They're great people. They went through a lot with the transition, and they supported me the whole way through, which was cool. We made it through. That happened 2 weeks before Christmas, and there was not really a graceful transition period. It was like, be ready for Christmas. And you've been a worship leader before. You know how Christmas season goes.
That's one of the two big seasons of the year.
Yeah. So I was just kind of holding on for dear life for a few weeks, and then we slowly started to develop into, having basically a lifestyle statement, a mission statement, values, things that we pour over, focus time in prayer, and making sure that we have really good, not just cohesion, but like spiritual support with each other. And I think that's made all the difference in the worship team. And people come up and say, like, we can just tell, like, you guys are meshing in a way we've never seen. And it's the same team. It's just the spending time in prayer, honestly. Mostly just edifying each other and lifting each other up in support and coming in with a peaceful mindset and attitude. But it's been a lot of fun. It doesn't wear me down. Our church is talking about going to 3 services. Surprise to everyone who's listening that goes to my church that doesn't know. That is kind of something that's on the table. Our church is growing really fast right now, and I think we're going to be going to 3 services. So that's going to be a new challenge for me. Is every single week hitting the set list 4 times. Practice in the morning and then 3 sets. But I'm pretty excited about it. So honestly, I need the practice because I saw. Just to bring him up again, I saw Brandon Lake's tour had 49 stadium stops on it, and I was like, all right, I got to do 50.
Yes.
Looks like I got to you have the stamina to do 50.
Yes. For all the jokes that come your way about, little Brandon Lake or, Tyler Puddle or whatever they try to call you, you know what, man? Get it, man. Chase that. A wise man once told me you gotta emulate before you innovate, and so man,
I've heard that before.
You do you, boo. I think you've got this.
That's like I want to touch on that for a second.
Let's do it.
Because yes, I absolutely love Brandon Lake's music. Mm-hmm. I think he is with a few others steering this ship in the direction of the way that Christian music is going right now, and I kind of fell into the likeness by accident. I already had the hair. This was actually just a short haircut that I had the sides cut, and I just kept cutting it through COVID because, I can buzz this. I didn't want to, try to handle all this. And it turned into long hair, and then I decided to braid it, and that's when I met you. But honestly, when I first started singing in worship, I just noticed at the bottom of the CCLI sheets, I just kept seeing the name Brandon Lake. And I didn't know who that was, and so eventually I looked him up and I found out. I started following him, and a week later, somebody in my gym was like, I have front row tickets to a Brandon Lake concert that I can't go to. Do you want them? Because I was talking about I just found this guy, Brandon Lake. And he was like, and I was like, yeah, I want the tickets for sure. So I went. It was called Riverfest. And I went, and Brandon was there and Phil were there. And I thought it was part of the Summer Nights worship tour, but it's not. It was right before their first one, I guess. Mm-hmm. They just happened to be at the same place.
Wow.
But I watched them both lead. And I got to say, those two, they are the most influential people in my music. Because I watched them and I was like, that's what I want to do. And it wasn't, yes, the rock star part is really fun. That is fun. It gives me energy and it gives me life. But the fact that they're preachers. They're bringing people to the gospel through music, and they don't waste an opportunity. I don't think you could ever find a set list that either of them do where they don't actually give an opportunity for people to accept Christ, and that's huge. And so after I saw them, and I was like, yeah, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. Then I started diving into it, and I was like, well, they're both dads. They're both leaders in their church. Good Christian men. I don't know them personally. I feel like I do, but I don't. But that's who I want to be like. You find who you want to be like, and then you emulate it. And although I'm following that track, I'm my own person. I don't want to be a farmer, Brandon. I don't want to live in California, Phil. I absolutely do emulate good Christian leaders. And so when people say oh, you're like Brandon Lake, or oh, that song sounds like so-and-so, I'm like, yeah, thank you. Cool. hopefully it reaches like even a fraction of the people that they're reaching for the gospel. I'll count it a win if it's one. So,
Well, and I think it's extremely interesting that God seems to be leading you on a similar path as far as, fatherhood, the ministry, covering the same bases that they seem to be covering, even on their artistic journey. It's not an identical path, but I see a lot of similarities.
right. And that's I think that's a great thing. They're blazing a path towards, honestly, you see Brandon with the Jelly Roll collab and singing a Christian song in a secular venue with 100,000 people. Who is that reaching? That's incredible.
Absolutely. Tearing those walls that have been up since popular music came about, man. Tearing those walls down. It's beautiful.
Bringing God into everyday things. That's bold.
Yes.
And honestly, it's borderline scary because, when you're a worship leader and you're in the worship scene, you're surrounded by Christians. So it's fairly easy to...
It's a safe zone.
Yeah, it's a safe space.
Yeah.
But to go into a non-Christian secular space and not only like sing that song, but like he was praying backstage with the artists. Not Christian artists. He's praying over them. I'm like, this is incredible. Like it's still, I can still say a year and a half later, like, I want that. That's what I want to do. And like, by no means do I want to step on their toes. I want my own career. I want what God has for me through that path. But guys like that are setting a great example. And there's not just them. There's a lot of people out there doing amazing things. Those are just the two people that I resonated with the most and I've seen in concert the most, honestly. I hadn't gone to concerts for like a decade, and then I saw them, and then I went to summer worship nights. And then like Brandon came back around, and then Phil came back around. I was like, this is crazy. Like they're just touring the most. So, it's kind of cool. But we can hop off that train now.
I'm glad we chased that rabbit because, that is... I think it's important things to realize. I think it's important things to make clear because there is a kind of an unspoken, not a war and not even a battle. That's too dramatic of a thing. But there's an unspoken, maybe conflict between label artists versus indie artists and their perception and their importance and their reach to people. Just because Brandon Lake and Phil Wickham are mainstream. Some indie artists like us, coming up and saying, oh, I don't know if I'll ever be able to reach what they're able to reach. No, you know what? God can use anybody. And you see God using Brandon Lake. You see God using Phil Wickham. We see God using Tyler Philip Ratcliffe. And it takes everybody being a willing vessel.
Right,
You got to be willing to obey.
Right. And I may never see the stage side of a stadium. But if God's using me in my church, on the ground level, on the grassroots, we need those people too,
Absolutely.
And that's cool. And like, I would love to do a stadium. Wink, wink. I'd love to play in the stadium.
So stadiums, if you're looking for artists.
Right, I'm saying. But
we got the Timu Brandon Lake Jelly Roll combination right here.
Yeah, right. But whether or not I do that, I want to make sure that I'm bringing the effort, bringing the diligence to my music. Whether I have 200 listeners or 200,000 listeners, it's steward it really well. Put out only the best, only stuff you've prayed over, only stuff you've really taken time with. Let God take the lead, but then put the effort in. I think a lot of people think like, oh, if God wants to use it, he'll use it, and I don't have to do anything else. It's like God will use it, but God will give you the tools to get it out there. And all that to say, if a song has huge reach or whether it only reaches a few, it still can be used by God. So,
all that to say, Brandon Lake, if you're looking for co-writers, he's no. Hey man, words to live by. And speaking of using the tools that God has given you, Tyler Philip Ratcliffe is not always a solo artist, is he? You have started another side hustle, another group, perhaps. Tell me about Vespers Worship.
Vespers was my training grounds and has become so much more than that. So when I first started writing songs and I decided that I wanted to lead and sing, and I didn't want to step on the toes of anybody in church, I just said, do you guys mind if I use the church to lead a worship night? And they were like, sure, why not? We'll be there. Why not? And, the staff was super supportive of it. And I said, okay, cool. And I brought in teens and brought in my own band. I just pulled some people together that I knew, and we did a worship night. And we had probably 100 people there the first time because I just told everybody, and I was really excited about it. And then it grew, and I mean, now we consistently have 200 plus people in that space. It just kept growing into something, and then this last spring we decided to record a cover of Days of Elijah and release it. And I just was like, how would Elevation Worship do Days of Elijah? We would go big and we'd have a party. So I did that, and I brought in Spencer Wolf, my videographer.
Nice.
And he literally he set up 3 cameras, and we tracked it, and we went through it twice, and we overlaid some of the video footage and tracked it live and threw it out there. And it exists now. So if any churches are like ours are looking for, hey, we used to love Days of Elijah 20 years ago and looking for a way to refresh it, like I can send out the tracks, I can send out chord charts, whatever anybody needs. It's a fun song. I threw in a couple key changes.
Okay, yeah. I checked it out on Spotify. I said, there's a key. Oh, there's another key change.
Yeah.
How about that? Man, so you're handing out chord charts, you're handing out tracks, all that stuff, if churches want to throw that in their worship rotation?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, just send me an email. My email is info@tylerphilipratcliffe.com.
You know what? That's good, man. While we're winding down, you got any other ways to be reached besides email? What's a good way to follow you on socials?
Well, honestly, the best way is to write a note and then tape it to a rock and throw it through Z Studios windows here.
Oh, hang on a second now. These palatial studios, our windows are not quite rock-proof yet, so maybe avoid that for a little bit.
Yeah, if somebody throws a rock through your window, I'm sorry. I'm not liable. I'm not covering it. So, my handle is Tyler Philip Ratcliffe. Philip with one L, Ratcliffe with an E on everything. So Instagram is where you find me the most. I do cross-post over to TikTok and Facebook and YouTube Shorts and all sorts of places, but I respond to everybody on Instagram. So if you want to ever hit me up on Instagram, that's the easiest place to find me.
Awesome. All right, man, before we wrap it up, I got to ask you one more question, all right?
Jesus.
That might actually be a valid answer.
Oh, okay.
Here we go. The last question, and I want to ask this of every artist that comes on this show. Why are you doing what you're doing?
I directly feel called to do this, and my why is my kids. I want to leave a legacy of no matter what happened with his career, Tyler always followed the Lord. And he always did what was asked, even if it was hard, even if it, meant long nights away from us. He did what was asked, and he did it faithfully. And ultimately I'm looking for that well done, my good and faithful servant that we're all kind of hoping for. Definitely hoping for. And I'd say my kids. It's my main reason. Leave a legacy of ministry.
Well spoken, sir. It has been an honor and a privilege, a pleasure to get to interview you today right here. And man, I got to tell you, this is a great way to kick this interview series, this podcast series off. Make sure you check us out at Brite Lite Radio. Once again, I'm Zach Flash. Check out Kingdom Chorus and Eric Abbott. Check out Tyler Philip Ratcliffe. And I can't wait to see you guys in the next interview. Thank you so much for joining us, Tyler. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
And,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to the next time down the road. See y'all next time.